When we think of a great movie opening, we usually think of a cold open, which is like a mini story that reflects the themes to come throughout the rest of the movie. But what if a movie took a typical opening, like a race to kick off a racing movie, and included a series of flashbacks and nested stories that set up not just themes, but later revelations, character arcs, and a complete reframing of certain moments on repeat watches, all while introducing us to a surreal world where people will send a bomb to your house if you're a good enough driver. The opening scene of the Wachowski sisters' 2008 film Speed Racer manages to accomplish all of this, and it does it in just 15 minutes. Well, technically 17. The Wachowskis have a big story to tell with Speed Racer, one that combines corporate espionage, race fixing, stock market manipulation, and a message about the dangers of capitalism interfering with art. All wrapped up in a kids movie where a chimp throws its own poop. And we've seen not only how good these filmmakers are at opening a big story, but how important it is to them to set the table properly. I'm talking, of course, about The Matrix. The Matrix's opening is so concise while feeling so action-packed that when I first started on this video, I was convinced it was at least a 10-minute long scene. But only 6 minutes have passed when Trinity is pulled out of the Matrix at the phone booth, and by the time Speed Racer's intro is complete, Neo is already being questioned by Agent Smith. In fact, Warner Brothers didn't even greenlight the Wachowskis' proposed $60 million budget for The Matrix until they saw how good the opening was. So let's take a look at everything Speed Racer's opening scene communicates to the audience in around 15 minutes. And spoiler alert. We start with Michael Giacchino's rapidly increasing score in a vibrant rainbow of colors, then slow down as we see Speed Racer in a locker room, nervously anticipating a race. We then cut back to him as a child, just as restless and struggling to focus on an exam. Speed's teacher informs his mother that his mind is completely focused on racing. We get mentions of Speed's father, a mechanic, and Speed's older brother, a driver who Speed idolizes. We quickly understand that this is a family of racers. Back to Speed in class, and we get a crude glimpse at the visuals we'll be treated to for the rest of the film. Here we get our first look at Trixie, who is charmed by Speed's love of racing. As Speed runs out of the classroom, we hear his teacher yell after him,
"Speed racers, slow down!"
Speed bursts into the world that we'll be living in for the next 2 hours, and at first, it's a shock. Is this gooey, green screen world gonna feel believable? Especially in contrast to something as mundane as a kid pleading to be included by his older brother, the world of Speed Racer at first feels, I'll admit it, straight up goofy. But I think the Wachowskis are warming us up to just how surreal things are going to get, and this quick scene is them throwing us into the deep end. Here we also meet Rex Racer before cutting back to the present, where we see a worn-out photo Speed keeps in his locker. This would be where most movies officially start, bookending a flashback that hints at the main character's past with the present day. But things are still way too normal for this movie to actually get started. After seeing Speed put on his racing jacket, we cut to the Thunderhead racetrack. We'd expect that to be Speed driving, but the film has actually jumped back to the past again as we see young Speed and Rex at the track. We get a sense of the Racer family's religious outlook on cars and driving, hear mention of the legendary Ben Burns, and see that Speed might have a knack for being behind the wheel. Then it's back to the present, where Speed definitely has a knack for driving. We also get a hint of this ghost effect on Rex's car that will become important as the opening goes on. As Speed tears across the track in the Mach 5, we hear one commentator say,
"Let us hope he does not make the same mistakes that his brother made."
This and the old photo Speed keeps with him are starting to feel ominous, but we're already moving on to the introduction of Sparky, the Snake Oil team, and the Mach 5's ability to vertically jump in the air. And already we're way more used to the look of this world than 3 minutes ago. Speed bangs around the Snake Oiler car, and we're introduced to the bubble airbag mechanic that lets us know drivers survive even when their cars explode, at least most of the time. The Wachowskis push the bar of surrealism further, showing us the Mach 5 making physics-defying turns and spins because this isn't a story about actual race car driving. It's a goddamn live-action anime.
Holy cannoli, Speed. You know you're racing?
Yeah. As we get increasingly worried that Rex Racer might not be around anymore, we return to the past, where Rex is back at Thunderhead, this time in a race. We see Pop for the first time, as well as this guy who says he wants Rex taken out.
I told you to take him out! It's trying, sir, it's trying, but he's just too fast!
Before we can consider whether he means that Rex should lose this race or never race again, it's back to the present. Speed is neck and neck with Rex's ghost, and through the commentators, we learn that the race we just saw Rex in was one that set a still-standing speed record. Speed is literally chasing the ghost of his brother and might break that record. Then, in a scene framed like the one we just saw, where young Speed and his family are watching Rex, we see Spritle as the new youngster, now watching Speed with the family. And a chimp is introduced. Speed keeps dominating, keeps spinning in circles for some reason, and watching it all is Trixie, now grown up. Things have been pretty non-stop lately, so the Wachowskis slow things down as we introduce the romance between Trixie and Speed. Trixie is defensive of Speed, thinks cars are cool, and as we transition to young Speed's home, we start to wonder whether this is the actual start of the movie. Speed gives a package to Pops, but when Speed mentions the car the mystery man was driving, Rex realizes something's up. And then after Rex takes way too much time just to explode his little brother's car when he could have just thrown the package even further, we realize that the world of racing extends past the track. This isn't just a sport, it's something people are willing to kill over. We also see that a little bit of violence won't scare Trixie away.
Cool beans.
Back to the race. As Speed continues down the track, we hear conflicting accounts of Rex Racer's legacy from the commentators. His story is tragic, he nearly ruined racing, he's brave, but just as Speed looks over to the ghost of his brother, we cut back to the past. Rex is leaving home under mysterious circumstances, and he leaves the Mach 5 to Speed. We see another mention of Ben Burns on the poster behind Speed, and Rex warns Speed that people will say awful things about him in the future. As Pop confronts Rex for leaving, we start to wonder whether this is the actual start of the movie. But we're starting to know better. And sure enough, we cut back to the present and see that this was a flashback from Pop. Also that we can move over to Mom and go back once more to the past, where sure enough, people are starting to call Rex a dirty racer. Back in the present, we hear that most people still remember Rex poorly, with one commentator saying,
Once a rat, always a rat, and in my book, Rex Racer's nothing but a rat.
Then it's back to the past as young Speed struggles with whether he believes his brother might be dirty. Then the present, where a commentator claims Rex was taking orders from the criminal underworld. Then the past, to see Speed defending his brother's name. Then present, where commentators recount that Rex's trial exposed Uniron, a leading racer sponsor, as being a collaborator with this guy from earlier, Blackjack Bernelli, who fixes races, and is rumored to have been behind the Casa Cristo tragedy, which we jump back in time to see as things slow down. We learn Rex Racer has reportedly died at the Casa Cristo Classic, his car exploding at the entrance to the Maltese ice caves. To recap, the world thinks that Rex sold out and started doing deals with the criminal underworld to ensure the desired racer won each race, inadvertently got a crime boss implicated during a trial for which the crime boss set up his death from prison. And all of this was in Mom's flashback that started 2 minutes ago. We return to Thunderhead in the present for good this time, where Speed is neck and neck with Rex. The crowd cheers him on, and we can tell that Speed has surpassed his brother. But then we learn a crucial trait about our main character. Family is more important to Speed than winning. He lets off the gas, we see that Rex's record still stands, and bursting through the ghostly image of his brother is Speed Racer. We see present-day Rex watching Speed, worried about all the fixers, criminals, and sponsors that are sure to come after him, and we're finally ready to start the movie. That is a massive amount of information to tell not just an audience, but an intended audience of kids in 15 minutes. While I admittedly didn't understand the particulars until rewatching this movie as an adult, even on a first viewing, you're able to understand the essentials. The Racer family loves cars, Speed drives fast, Trixie and Speed like each other, and Rex Racer is supposedly dead. We also get key insights about Speed himself. In these first few minutes, we see his ambition to be the fastest and his initial inability to understand the true stakes of the racing world before quickly coming face to face with them. But more than that, the groundwork all of the additional details lay is what allows the film to deliver its deeper messages later on. For example, Ben Burns is established as a racing idol in the opening scene.
They said that Ben Burns drove the final lap of the Vanderbilt Cup with his eyes closed.
No way!
No?
But we find out about an hour into the movie that his Grand Prix victory, an event which is a core memory for the Racer family and partially inspired Speed to become a driver in the first place, was fixed.
Did you know you were gonna win?
You know, everybody thought that me and Stickleton hated each other. Funny, ain't it?
We also later learned that Rex wasn't a dirty driver, but was helping the government expose race fixing and corporate corruption. This completely reframes the last conversation he has with Pops, and underscores the importance of doing the right thing despite what people say about you. And in that same conversation, Pops' character arc is set up and paid off in a mirrored confrontation with Speed towards the end of the movie, where instead of saying,
"You walk out that door now, you better not ever come back,"
he tells Speed,
"That door is always open. You can always come back."
And lastly, with all of the attempts on Rex's life being the consequence of his efforts to stop both corporations and criminals from interfering with the integrity of racing, we set up the core theme of the movie, that greed corrupts pure expression. And most importantly, Speed Racer's first 15 minutes are fun. Like the rest of the movie, things rarely stop moving, and by the end of the intro, we're ready to live in this colorful, surreal world for the next 2 hours. The final scene of Speed Racer is one of the most emotionally climactic endings to a movie I've seen, but it rests on the opening's precision and efficiency. Again, this may seem like a lot for a kid's movie, but that's because the Wachowskis had a lot of faith in young audiences. Lana Wachowski has said that she and Lily's main goal with Speed Racer was to challenge aesthetic norms present in film at the time, and compared their efforts to abstract art or the writing of James Joyce. Lana specifically called Joyce's writing an attempt to extend the grammar of literature to reflect more the way we experience the world. And it may be challenging as an audience to keep track of when the movie actually starts and which timeline we're in when viewed Speed Racer for the first time, but it's true to how every major character's memories must have been rushing through their heads during that first race. By the time Speed lifts his foot off the gas, we completely understand why he wants his brother to have this one last bit of a good legacy. The Wachowskis figured that kids would be far more receptive to an aesthetic shift than adults, which makes sense. I mean, another one of the greatest movie openings of all time is also a kids movie, WALL-E. And there's the Up Married Life montage, which doesn't start the movie, but still achieves a similar thing. Family-friendly films get a bad rap for being simplified or dumbed down, but it takes incredible skill to distill complex story beats or emotional themes into just a few minutes. In other words, sometimes simpler doesn't have to mean sparse. But as I said, the Wachowskis bet that the kids in the audience would tune into Speed Racer more than the adults. Considering I just went to a re-release of Speed Racer last month and it was a sold-out crowd, ranging from teens to full-grown adults, I'd say that bet paid off.